I'm Reverend Shirley DeMerchant. Welcome to Living in 3D, where the focus is on desiring God, digging deeper into God's Word, and developing a vision for your life. Welcome to this video series called Prayer Helps, where I want to encourage you in your prayer life. In the last couple of videos, I've been sharing about personal answers to prayer. Today I'd like to talk about a prayer that I prayed that took God a very long time to answer, over 10 years. It was a prayer concerning something very important to me, that is, ordination to the Christian ministry. In 1985, I graduated with my Master of Divinity. That meant that I had finished the formal training for ordination, but I didn't know if God wanted me to seek ordination or not. Just because I had the training didn't mean that was right for me to go through with ordination. I didn't want to be ordained just because it was expected of me or because I could. I wanted God's clear direction. So I prayed, Lord, show me if you want me to seek ordination. Well, over the years, I had a few opportunities to do ministry, and I continued to pray that prayer. In my last video, I told you about serving for 6 months as interim senior pastor and how that was a profoundly positive experience for me, where people confirmed my gifts for ministry. They told me that I should seek a church when that 6 months was up, and that's what I did. I put my name out there to let people know that I was looking for a church, but nothing happened. I didn't get a phone call, I didn't get an email, I didn't get any inquiries at all. So I assumed that God didn't want me to be ordained because he didn't open the door for more ministry. Well, it was a difficult time for me and I needed to find work. I decided then to go to South Korea to teach English as a second language for at least a year so that I could pay off my student loan. I was there for about 6 weeks when the missionary in charge of the English worship service that I attended took a heart attack, and they needed a replacement right away. Since I had theological training, they asked me to fill in, and I was glad to do that. I hadn't brought any sermons with me or any of my resource books because I went to Korea to teach English, not to do ministry. But that experience made me once again contemplate whether or not I should seek ordination. I thought, if I'm ordained, I will be more open, or at least more prepared for unexpected opportunities for ministry. Also, even though I really enjoyed Korea, I figured I would probably move back to Canada sometime and want to find a church, so it would be better for me to be ordained before that happened. I did ask a couple who were in charge of the English worship service what they thought of me seeking ordination. They knew a lot about Korean culture and had a lot of experience in Asia, and they recommended that I not go for ordination because the Korean church most Korean denominations didn't ordain women, and a lot of churches in Asia didn't support women in ministry. So I considered what they had to offer in advice, but I really felt God wanted me to do this. So that's what I did. I contacted the executive minister of our convention, Dr. Harry Gardner, who walked me through the process and encouraged me to apply. But in that conversation, we realized there were two problems. One, I didn't have the year-long supervised time in ministry that was required for ordination. But when I told Harry what I had done for ministry in Canada and in Korea, he accepted that as that practical experience that was needed. The second problem was that after I went through the ordination experience, I was going back to Korea. That was a problem because in our process of ordination, individuals were to be ordained to a particular ministry and to go into that ministry, but I wasn't going into ministry, I was going back to teaching. When we looked more closely at the requirements of our convention, it said that people could be ordained to pastoral ministry, to chaplaincy, or to missionary work. It was acceptable for me to apply to be ordained to Christian missionary service. These designations didn't limit what I could do as an ordained ministry, but indicated the focus of my ministry at the time of application. Then I had to do the detailed statement of faith, which had to be done for March. This was in 1997, and went before the Ordination Council in August. I remember how Dr. Andrew McCrae introduced me. He said, "Shirley, you are a very unique candidate for ordination. First of all, you will be the first person that we have ordained to Christian missionary service. And secondly, you're the only candidate who has no fixed address." He knew that I was traveling a lot between Canada and South Korea. Well, I passed the ordination examination, but I didn't have time to stay in Canada for the ordination service. You're not ordained until a local church goes through the process or the service of ordination and lays hands upon you. But I had a teaching contract in South Korea, so I had to go back to South Korea and wait until my vacation in 1998 for the service of ordination. I went back to Korea, and I found instead of limiting me, this ordination actually opened doors for me. It was really quite surprising. It helped solve a lot of problems that the English service had, or that I had in providing for the needs of those who attended the worship service. One was communion. When it was time for communion, which wasn't very frequent in this church, a Korean pastor would come and conduct communion for us in the English service, because only pastors could do that. Well, often the Korean pastor didn't have very good English, and it became a challenge for the native English speakers to enjoy and appreciate communion when the language of the person leading communion was difficult to follow. So I went to the senior pastor and asked if I could lead communion, because in Canada, being ordained, I could do that. And he consented. So that solved that problem. It wasn't too long after that two men who attended the English service wanted to be baptized. One was from the United States and one was from India. Only the senior pastor baptized people, so I had to go back to him and ask if I could do that. And I explained that in Canada, being ordained, I could do baptisms. So he said yes, and that was really a delightful experience. And it was sometime after that a Canadian girl who attended the English service wanted to marry a Korean, and she wanted her wedding in English. Well, only the senior pastor did weddings in this church, so I had to go to him once again and ask for permission, and he gave it to me. I just really appreciated him. He was a wonderful man to work with. Well, for a short time, I moved away from this church and away from the ministry at this church. And a group of people from the church came and talked to me and said, "Would you come back and be on staff and responsible for the English service?" Well, I was quite shocked at their request. I said, "Your denomination doesn't even ordain women. Why would you ask me?" And they said, "Well, our senior pastor has no problem with it. And because I was ordained in the Canadian church, he saw that it wasn't an issue." So I said, "If you can get me a visa, I will come back and I'll be responsible for the English service." I did just that, and it was a wonderful experience. Here's a picture of my name tag, which says Pastor Shirley on it. There were probably about 20 full-time male pastors at this church, and I think about 25 full-time female workers who were called evangelists. And then there was me. Our staff meetings were interesting. I remember I would sit with the men because the women would say, "Oh, you sit there because you're a pastor." And I would say in Korean, "Oh, but I want to sit with you because I'm a woman." They were wonderfully accepting of me, and the experience there prepared me well for ministry back in Canada. I'm really grateful for that senior pastor and that church, and just being open to doing something different. As I think about this prayer request about being ordained and how long it took God to make it clear to me the path I was to take, it reminds me that God has more than one answer to prayer. Sometimes it's yes, Sometimes it's no. Sometimes it's not right now. So I want to encourage those of you who are praying for a person or a situation that when God doesn't answer right away, it doesn't necessarily mean no. It might just be a delay, and God's timing is perfect. If I had been ordained right after I finished my formal training, I probably would never have gone to South Korea. And I can't imagine what my life would be like today without that experience. So be encouraged, be faithful in prayer,